8-3 on my official playoff pick so far, and in last week's stats and trends video, I gave you even more winners. Talk about our rushing yards props. Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Bo Nix, Kyron Williams all went over their rushing yards total. Receiving yards market, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, and DJ Moore also went over their receiving yards total. And I hope to give you more winners in this video. But really, this video is designed to look at the best matchups using advanced numbers to give you an edge in the championship round. Not only are we going to look at the team matchups, the look ahead lines, current lines, where the money is flowing, but we'll also highlight players that you should target in the player prop market. And we have two games to break down on Sunday. The Broncos taking on the Patriots, and of course, the Rams taking on the Seahawks. Now, you're going to hear a lot of stats in this video, but the three main ones, DVOA, EPA per play, and success rate. Now, in our wildcard stats and trends video, I already gave you a lowdown of what these stats mean and why they're important when it comes to handicapping NFL games. So if you need a refresher on those stats, make sure to go check out that video so it can get you prepared for this one. Now, before we dive into both games, the best way to support this channel, of course, is to make sure to like the video. If you are enjoying all of the free content, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss my official picks later on in the week, and leave a comment down below. What are any of your thoughts, early leans, favorite props? You let me know in the comments section below. Now, first game up, Patriots versus Broncos. Now, it starts on a sour note because we got the horrible news that Bo Nix is going to miss this game after fracturing his ankle on the second to last play of overtime. And it really puts a damper, of course, on this game, as now Jarrett Stidham is going to be the Broncos quarterback. However, when that happens, it can open up opportunities, especially in the betting market, because our job is to figure out what truly is the drop-off from Bo Nix to Jarrett Stidham. Well, we can look at the look-ahead lines from last week and see how the books adjusted and say, did they adjust too much or not enough? Now, on the look-ahead line before Bo Nix got injured, Broncos were -1.5 favorite with a -115 money line, and the total was 45.5. After we heard the news, of course, the line changed. Patriots reopened as 4.5-point favorites with a total of 40.5. Since that look ahead, money came in on the New England Patriots, pushed it up to 5.5, and then it was bought back down to 4.5. So it settled in that area. Of course, I'm recording this on Tuesday. Lines are subject to change. And the total look ahead with Bo Nix, 45.5, down to 40.5, but it was hit up to 41.5, passing through that key number. And before we even talk about whether or not this adjustment was warranted, one thing to note, home dogs of 4+ points are 9-0 against the spread over the last 50 years in the playoffs. Over the last 50 years. The last one was the Carolina Panthers against the LA Rams. This is the largest home dog in a conference game since the 1970 merger. So before we dive in, let's just look at the overall stats from the season. As you can tell, Broncos with Bo Nix were about an average offense by EPA per play, success rate, and DVOA. However, they were a top 5 defense by EPA per play and DVOA, which is schedule adjusted, but by success rate, they fell to 9th. Now, the Patriots, their offense pretty much top 5 across the board, and then their defense, you could say it's about average, probably a little bit below, but they've been playing much better in the playoffs so far. So, diving back into the matchups. To be perfectly honest with you, at least as we sit here on Tuesday, I'm not certain anyone, or at least I know I don't, but I have a hard time believing that anyone really has a perfect number for the switch from Bo Nix to Jarrett Stidham. Because Stidham, he hasn't started a game since 2023. And in 2023, he made 2 starts. Among quarterbacks with at least 50 snaps in 2023, Stidham ranked 38th out of 59 qualified quarterbacks in EPA plus completion percentage over expectation. And the quarterbacks kind of around him, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, the Giants version of Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, kind of sounds like your run-of-the-mill backup. But that was also 2 years ago. And in 2022, he was better. He actually had a game for the Raiders where he threw for 365 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in an overtime loss to the 49ers. He showed the ability to push the ball, and in 2022, rushed for 84 yards in 2 games. However, in 23, He rushed for just 8 yards in 2 starts, but he threw for at least 220 yards in both games. So 2 years removed from an NFL start, he's vaulted into a starting role in the AFC Championship game. I just need more time to evaluate him. Going to go watch some more tape, but the good thing is there's still plenty of areas to discuss in this game beyond Stidham. So when Denver has the ball, the most logical pivot point, I assume all of us are thinking, is that they're going to lean heavier into the run. And while the Broncos got really bad news on the quarterback front, they got potentially good news on the running back front. J.K. Dobbins' practice window opened, and there's a chance he plays here, which will inevitably help Denver's rushing attack if he is able to suit up. However, New England just dominated Houston's run game a week ago, but I believe that the key difference here lies in play calling from Denver to Houston. I mean, Sean Payton is just schematically much more creative than Houston's staff. Payton is also one of the league's most aggressive designers of trick plays and shot plays off play action, which are good tools to kind of compensate for a QB's limitations. Now, Denver's offensive success hinges on staying out of long yardage situations and creating manufactured explosives rather than kind of sustained drop back efficiency. They're not going to look good for a lot of the game, but can they land enough explosives to keep this game close? So, in that scenario where they're going to need a couple of explosives to hang in there, who benefits? Well, you could look at Marvin Mims, Lil Jordan Humphrey, touchdown markets, longest reception markets. They could be the beneficiary of a Sean Payton kind of trick play or, big time play action. But right now, my favorite angle, I think, is actually Jarrett Stidham completions. Because when you look at his games, those 4 starts that I talked about he was over 18 and a half in all of them. And that's his current line. Game script, I think, is going to force Denver into more throwing situations. And Peyton does love his kind of screen passes behind the line of scrimmage. Bo Nix actually led the NFL in passes of that nature. So basically, kind of what we're looking at here is they're going to go deep and they're going to have really easy completions. How often will they go deep? Mims and Lil Jordan Humphrey could be the beneficiaries. But in terms of staying behind the line of scrimmage, I think they're going to give Jarrett Stidham a lot of easy lanes leading to completions. Now, does that lead to yards? Who knows? Completions, I like that angle. Now, for the Patriots offense against the Denver defense, this is a really interesting matchup. The Broncos play the second highest rate of man coverage in the NFL and play zone at one of the lowest rates in the NFL. And that profile runs directly into a strength of Drake May. He's number 2 in EPA per dropback against man, number 1 in explosive pass rate against man. The Chargers and the Texans, they play a ton of zone. And while May has just been elite against both man and zone, his passer rating against man is 128.8, number 1 in the NFL, 103.1 against zone. Still top 5, but not quite as good. Against man, he's as good as it gets. And he's faced 3 top 7 defenses, of course, Chargers, Houston, and now Denver. But schematically, this might be the easiest one for him to exploit. But it's not just Drake May. The Patriots should also have some success on the ground because similar to what we discussed last week, New England's run profile closely mirrors Buffalo's. Inside zone is New England's most frequent run type. They're number 1 in the NFL. And outside zone is their second most common concept, very similar to Buffalo. Right? We saw James Cook go over to 110 yards. And while Travion Henderson is the more popular player, Ramondre Stevenson is averaging 4.7 yards per carry on 26 attempts in the playoffs, while Henderson is at 2.5 yards per carry on 21 attempts. If I'm picking a running back to back here, it would be Ramondre Stevenson. Another area we talked about last week against Buffalo, Denver has struggled defending tight ends and slot receivers. Both Kincaid and Shakir were the leading receivers for Buffalo, and we could see the same for Hunter Henry and Demario Douglas. And the other matchup that I just find kind of fascinating is Kayshon Boutte against CB2 Riley Moss. Now, Riley Moss has been targeted a ton this year. Why? Well, he wasn't very good at the beginning of the year, and of course you have Surtain on the other side, but Riley Moss has gotten better and better, but Booty has also become a big explosive weapon for Drake May. Among players with at least 10 targets, he's second on New England at 21.7% explosive reception rate. It's really, really good. 24 of his 46 targets have been for 20 plus air yards. Moss is a good player, but again, he's still going to get targeted because they don't want to go to Surtain as much. So if Booty gets one-on-one with Riley Moss, could end up being a big play. So Booty's longest receptions could be a way to isolate that matchup. So a lot of players to look at. On the Denver side, LaJordan Humphrey, Marvin Mims, Jarrett Stidham completions. On the New England side, looking at Ramondre Stevenson rushing yards. Kayshon Boutte, I think, is interesting, but Hunter Henry and Demario Douglas, I like a little bit more. Plenty of prop angles. But in terms of looking at the side or the total, I just don't feel confident enough yet in my Jarrett Stidham analysis. I haven't fully figured out what truly is the drop off. But of course, my official picks will come on later in the week, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe. But that's the breakdown of Broncos versus Patriots from a statistical angle. Let's now look at Rams versus Seahawks. But before we transition into Rams Seahawks, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, because all of my plays are there and that's where all the lines I reference are, use bonus code JustGridiron when signing up and you will get up to a $1,500 new player offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app, sign up using bonus code JustGridiron. Deposit at least $10, place your first wager on any game. If the bet loses, you get up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Once you do, on top of the new player offer, Pro Football Playoffs are here. BetMGM is giving you 2 ways to make every snap even bigger. First up, Odds Boost token. Activated on any Pro Football Playoffs bet. Pick hits, looking at an even bigger payout. Simple as that. All right, Sunday Night Football, Rams, Seahawks. In my opinion, kind of feels like the Super Bowl. I have these two teams rated as the two best in the NFL. The opening line for this game was Seattle -1.5, and the Seahawks took instant money, pushing the line to 2.5. And the total has stayed pretty steady, opening at 47.5. And right now on BetMGM, it is still 47.5 as I am recording on Tuesday in the afternoon. Not a ton to really discuss on these lines. I kind of expect them to hold, of course, barring injury. But I think what's more interesting is looking at what the lines were in the previous two matchups, because, of course, these are division rivals, right? In week 11, when these two teams played in LA, the Rams were 3-point favorites with a total of 48.5. The score ended 21-19 in favor of the Rams, and we kind of saw that score reflected in the week 16 matchup. Now in Seattle, the Seahawks were 1.5-point favorites with a total of 42.5. The Seahawks would go on to win 38-37 in overtime. Now, so when you look at both of those and now the current line, it's clear the books are leaning towards the higher end of that total between 48.5 and 42.5. And in terms of the spread, the Seahawks are now the largest favorite that they have been against the Rams all season long. So before we dive into the matchup, let's just look at the overall numbers from the regular season. Now, it's clear you can make an argument Seattle is a top 10 offense, but clearly they're one of the best defense in the NFL. And now the Rams, if you look at both sides of the ball, statistically, they're slightly better than the Seattle Seahawks. But of course, just looking at the numbers, that doesn't mean the Rams are going to win this game. Divisional game, anything can happen. And Seattle has home field and rest on their side. So with all that being said, let's dive into the matchup. So let's start with the Rams when they have the ball against the Seahawks. Absolutely elite defense. But it wasn't so elite in week 16. Matthew Stafford delivered one of the most efficient passing performances of any quarterback this season in that game. Plus 0.499 EPA per dropback, which is out of this world elite. It would double basically the league's best season average. Threw for 457 yards, 3 touchdowns, didn't take a sack against what's otherwise been at least the most consistent defense in the NFL, maybe the second best to the Texans. But Stafford was great. The run offense, Kyren Williams, Blake Corum, was not, right? And the Rams have had one of the best rushing attacks all season long. They were held in check in this game. 38% rushing success rate. That was 9% below their season average. And they averaged less than 3.5 yards per carry. Not good. And when you look at how they were running the football, it was unusually narrow, 34 of 37 runs were zone concepts, only 3 man gap runs, despite man gap accounting for 32% of LA's regular season rushing attempts. So they went away from that concept completely. And so, what should we expect here? Hard to know, but at least we should expect for him to adjust the run game structure because the week 16, that didn't work. So, what do I think could happen? Increase man gap concepts to lean into their strengths. But one area that I actually think we're going to see more often than what we've seen already this season, jet sweeps, using them as kind of a changeup here. And I think he'll use them as a wrinkle to keep Seattle off balance. Puka Nacua had 105 rushing yards on the season. So a sneaky prop could be look at Puka Nacua's over rushing yards, but I got more on Puka. Seattle's heavy too high coverage usage leaves the middle of the field vulnerable, generally speaking, which was exposed in week 16. Puka Nacua punished middle of the field coverage. 3 receptions for 153 yards on throws over the middle, and he finished with 225 receiving yards. So, with how good Seattle is stopping the run, I really think this is lining up for yet another Puka Nacua masterclass, especially from the slot. Seattle is 13th in DVOA against the slot compared to top three literally everywhere else. But if we're looking at unders, I'm worried about Devontae Adams because Adams is the primary X receiver for the Rams, and there is no better team at covering the X receiver than Seattle by DVOA. And Adams didn't play in that week 16 game, but in their first one, he only had 1 catch for 1 yard, albeit it was for a touchdown on 8 targets. I think his unders are definitely worth taking a look at. So now let's look at Seattle's offense against the Rams defense. So the Seahawks won in week 16, but Darnold didn't play well. His EPA per dropback was negative 0.229, bad. 2 interceptions, inconsistent decision making throughout the game. And this has been a trend. This matchup mirrors prior struggles for Darnold against Chris Shula, the Rams DC. The same issues appeared in the 2024 wildcard round when Darnold was in Minnesota, happened in the week 11 matchup. And again, 37 points looks great, but it wasn't because of Darnold. And I think the key here is the Rams can get pressure without heavy blitzing, right? In week 16, they had a 34% pressure rate with just a 15% blitz rate, sacking Darnold 4 times. That 34% pressure rate would have been the highest of any team in the NFL this season, and the blitz rate would have been the lowest of any team in the NFL, right? What do we talk about with the Texans defense? They can rush forward, they can get pressure without blitzing, without bringing 5, 6 in the box. That's what the Rams have been able to do against the Seahawks, and it's given Darnold a ton of problems. Now, how did they put up 37 points then? Explosives. Kenneth Walker broke a 55-yard touchdown. Rashid Shaheed broke a 31-yard reverse. A.J. Barner added a 26-yard touchdown on top of that. So basically what I'm saying is down-to-down success for Seattle against the Rams hasn't been there, right? They'll either put up a 19-point game where those explosives don't land or a 38-point game where they do. It's hard to know. And that's why I'm kind of leaning towards the Rams right now, because I feel more comfortable in the Rams down-to-down success than I do Seattle's. Of course, Seattle can still win this game. They land those explosives. But counting on that, I'm not so sure. Now, in terms of player props that I would look at on the Seattle side, Cooper Kupp I'm really eyeing right now because JSN is going to get a ton of attention. And on top of it, the Rams have been one of the best teams in the NFL against tight ends. So who should be the beneficiary of all this? I think Cooper Kupp against his former team. And Darnold should have a lot of faith in him after he caught 5 catches for 5 targets. He caught all of his targets for 60 yards, right? So again, in terms of the side, I am leaning towards the Rams at plus 2.5. I also do have my Rams futures, so I don't know if I'm going to double down on them. But right now, just speaking, I'm leaning towards the Rams sides while everyone is running to Seattle and I get there at home, they have the most rest because that also has to factor in. So while I believe more in the Rams as a unit, I love the spot Seattle's in. Again, make sure to subscribe. My official picks will be out later this week. Got a lot of props for you. Got a lot of leans on sides and totals. And hopefully, if you enjoyed all of this free content, again, the best way to support, just make sure to smash the like button. And if you're new to BetMGM, make sure to use code JustGridiron because, of course, you get that first bet offer up to $1,500 back in bonus bets. That'll do it for me. Thank you all for listening. And just another reminder, it's not gambling advice.